Welcome back to the deep dive. Really excited about today's exploration. We're diving into chapter 12 of Outlive, which is called Training 101, How to Prepare for the Centenarian Decathlon.
Sounds intense.
It does. But our mission today is really to unpack how exercise, when done strategically, can genuinely optimize not just how long you live, but how well you live your health span.
Right.
And this isn't, about running marathons unless you want to. It's about building resilience for a long, really high-quality life, being able to do the things you love.
Exactly. And the chapter takes a fascinating approach. It's all about tailoring exercise specifically for longevity principles.
Yeah.
It breaks it down into three core dimensions.
Okay.
Aerobic endurance and efficiency, cardio, then strength, and finally stability. And that last one, stability, is so often overlooked, but it's foundational.
Let's jump right into that first one then, aerobic efficiency, especially zone 2 training. I think many of us are kind of stuck in that mindset of exercise being about burning calories.
Yeah, the calorie focused.
But Outlive really reframes it. It pushes us to think about fuels, how our body actually uses glucose compared to fatty acids. That feels like a really big shift.
It is a huge shift. And at the center of that fuel use are the mitochondria. Those little engines inside our cells.
The powerhouses, right?
Exactly. They burn both glucose and fat.
Yeah.
And their health. It's absolutely fundamental. It connects to your metabolic health, brain health, even how your body handles inflammation and oxidative stress.
Wow. So they're involved in pretty much everything.
Pretty much. If your mitochondria aren't working well, you're not working well. Simple as that, really. And that's why Zone 2 is so critical.
So for listeners trying to picture it, what is Zone 2 exactly? The book describes it as being able to talk but feeling maybe a little strained.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, to that aerobic activity level that's, comfortable enough, but definitely not easy. It's between easy and moderate effort.
Okay.
And a lot of this insight comes from Dr. Inigo San Millan. He's an incredible exercise scientist.
Oh, yeah, I've heard his name. Works with top athletes.
He does, like Tadej Pogačar, the Tour de France winner. But what's really interesting is his passion is actually connecting all that elite knowledge back to public health.
Ah, okay.
Linking exercise, mitochondrial health, and diseases like cancer and type 2 diabetes. That's his real focus. And his research, particularly a study with George Brooks, showed these striking differences in what they call metabolic flexibility.
Metabolic flexibility, meaning how well you switch fuels.
Precisely. Elite cyclists could generate huge amounts of power while mostly burning fat. But the sedentary folks with metabolic syndrome, they were burning almost all glucose right from the start.
Wow.
They showed virtually zero ability to tap into their fat stores.
Yeah.
That metabolic inflexibility is a major red flag for chronic disease.
And that really hits home, doesn't it? If these pro cyclists training 30, 35 hours a week spend 80% of that time in Zone 2.
Right, the vast majority.
How much more important is it for the rest of us, not just for endurance, but for actually improving mitochondrial health and maybe preventing those chronic diseases?
Absolutely critical. Zone 2 primarily uses those slow-twitch type 1 muscle fibers. They're packed with mitochondria. The trick is staying below your lactate threshold.
That feel the burn point?
Exactly. If you feel that intense burn, you've likely pushed past Zone 2. For people who want precision, the author uses a lactate monitor, aiming for about 1.7 to 2.0 millimoles.
Okay, but most of us don't have a lactate monitor handy, so how can you estimate it?
Well, the easiest is probably that talk test we mentioned. Can you talk in full sentences?
Yes.
Comfortably. Maybe not quite, just barely. That's likely Zone 2.
Okay, sort of breathy sentence.
Exactly. Or you can use heart rate. It's usually around 70 to 85% of your actual maximum heart rate, though finding your true max can be tricky.
Yeah, and the difference in output, you mentioned 300 watts for pros versus maybe 100 for sedentary people in Zone 2, that just screams mitochondrial inefficiency in the second group.
It really does. They're forced onto glycolysis, burning glucose much earlier. But the great news is mitochondria are plastic. They adapt.
Meaning we can improve them.
Definitely. A big part of aging is mitochondrial decline, fewer and less efficient ones. But Zone 2 exercise actually triggers mitochondrial biogenesis, making new good ones, and mitophagy, which is clearing out the old dysfunctional ones.
So it's like a cellular refresh.
Exactly. You're actively fighting that age-related decline. And it massively helps with glucose control, too. Muscles are your biggest glucose sink, right?
Right.
Better mitochondria mean your muscles get much better at taking up and using stored glucose, preventing those damaging blood sugar spikes. There's even this pathway called NIMGU.
NIMGU.
Non-insulin mediated glucose uptake. Basically, a way for glucose to get into muscle cells without needing insulin. It's powerful. The book mentions a type 1 diabetic who controls glucose largely just by brisk walking.
That's incredible. So for you listening, Zone 2 isn't some elite thing. A brisk walk where conversation's a little tough, maybe cycling on a stationary bike, swimming. It's accessible.
Totally accessible. Find something you enjoy that lets you maintain that pace. Consistency is key.
How much consistency are we talking?
Well, if you're starting out, even 2 30-minute sessions a week can make a difference. But for long-term benefits, the aim should be at least 3 hours a week, maybe 4 45-minute sessions.
Okay, that seems manageable.
And if you are on a stationary bike, tracking watts per kilogram is a great way to see progress. Aiming for 2 watts per kilo is pretty fit, 3 is very fit, 4 plus is pro level. But it's about your improvement.
And there are bonus benefits too, right? For the brain.
Oh, absolutely. Zone 2 improves blood flow to the brain, boosts BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is vital for cognitive health. It's actually a key part of Alzheimer's prevention strategies.
It really feels like the foundation, doesn't it? The book uses the analogy of building the foundation for a house. You don't see it, but everything else depends on it.
Perfect analogy. It's essential, but often invisible work.
Okay, so if Zone 2 is the steady foundation, what about the second dimension, VO2 max? This sounds like the complete opposite.
It pretty much is. VO2 max is your maximum rate of oxygen consumption during intense effort. Think short, hard, maybe minutes-long bursts. It's your peak aerobic power.
We're top gear.
Exactly. And while Zone 2 helps it a bit, you need specific high-intensity work to really push that ceiling higher. Usually introduced after you've built a solid Zone 2 base, maybe 5-6 months in.
And why focus on this? It sounds unpleasant.
It is unpleasant to test. But the reason is its incredibly strong link to longevity. A higher VO2 max is one of the best predictors of a longer life. Testing it annually gives you crucial data, even if the test itself isn't fun.
And it's a proxy for capability too, right? The book gives stark examples of how function declines with age if VO2 max drops.
Yeah, the examples are powerful. Like running a 10-minute mile might be average for a 35-year-old, but it puts a 70-year-old in the top 5%. Climbing stairs briskly normal at 45, but requires elite fitness at 75.
So it's not just a number, it's about being able to do things.
Absolutely. Which is why the author sets really ambitious goals for patients, aiming for the elite range, the top 2% for your age and sex, or even aiming for the elite level as someone decades younger.
Wow, that's aiming high.
It is. But think about that 50-year-old hiker example. Average VO2 max now means she likely can't hike those mountains at 80. To keep doing what she loves, she needs a much higher VO2 max today. It's proactive future-proofing. But, and this is important, any improvement counts. Seriously. Just moving from the bottom 25% for VO2 max to the next quartile up is linked to almost a 50% lower risk of dying from any cause.
50%, that's huge.
It's massive. And there's a scary floor too. If VO2 max drops too low, around 18 for men, 15 for women, independent living becomes really difficult. Your engine just doesn't have enough power for daily life.
So how trainable is it? Can we actually improve it significantly?
Much more than people think. Standard studies show maybe 13-17% improvement over weeks. But Outlive frames it as potentially a 2-year project for much bigger gains. It takes time and dedication.
So it's a long game.
Definitely. And look at the study on those octogenarian athletes. Average VO2 max of 38, compared to 21 for controls. These 80-year-olds had the aerobic engines of people 30 or 40 years younger.
They basically reversed their aerobic age. That's incredible.
It shows what's possible. Improving your VO2 max is like gaining functional youngerness. The book estimates boosting it by just 6 points is like knocking 12 years off your functional age.
So a 60-year-old going from average, say, 30 up to 35 or 38, they could have the fitness of someone in their 50s or even 30s.
Exactly. It's a remarkable return on investment. And think of Robert Marchand, cycling records at 101, then improving his VO2 max again and breaking his record at 103. It really drives home that it's never too late to improve.
So inspiring. What does the training actually look like?
Typically, 1 or 2 VO2 max sessions a week on top of your Zone 2 work. It involves intervals, usually 3 to 8 minutes long, at a hard pace, not an all-out sprint, but definitely challenging.
Like the 4 minutes hard, 4 minutes easy example.
Yeah, that's a classic. 4 minutes hard, then 4 minutes very easy recovery, getting your heart rate well below 100 BPM. Repeat that 4 to 6 times. That recovery part is crucial.
I liked the Heathrow Airport story in the book, running with suitcases.
Haha, yeah. Running a mile in under 8 minutes with 20-pound bags. That's a real-world VO2 max demand right there. A sudden burst of power.
It kind of mirrors that hunter-gatherer idea, mostly slow, but sometimes needing that all-out effort.
Precisely. Good going slow for a long time, but also capable of going hard when necessary. That combination preserves your functional range. It's like having that Spinal Tap amp that goes to 11.
Hmm.
You've got extra capacity when you need it.
Okay, let's move to the third dimension, strength. This seems quite different again. The author talks about his own journey with weight training, starting way back.
Yeah, he has a long history with it.
Hmm.
But the focus now is pure longevity. And the stats are pretty sobering. Muscle mass starts declining in our 30s.
Hmm.
By 80, you might have 40% less quad muscle than at 25.
40% less.
Wow.
But here's the kicker. Strength declines 2 to 3 times faster than mass. And power, that's strength times speed, declines 2 to 3 times faster than strength.
Why such a rapid drop in strength and power?
It's largely the atrophy of our fast twitch, type 2 muscle fibers. These are crucial for strength and power, and they shrink rapidly without specific stimulus. That's stimulus.
Yeah.
Heavy resistance training. It's non-negotiable if you want to keep them.
And inactivity is dangerous here too, right? Even short spells.
Hugely dangerous. That study on 67-year-olds losing over 3 pounds of lean mass in just 10 days of bed rest. That's terrifying. Think about recovering from surgery or a bad flu. You lose muscle fast, and extreme muscle loss leads to sarcopenia, a key part of frailty. Frailty isn't just being weak, it's a specific syndrome. Losing weight without trying, exhaustion, low activity, slow walk, weak grip.
And trying to regain muscle when you're already frail is tough.
Incredibly tough. That study showing half of frail seniors gained 0 muscle after 6 months of strength training. They just maintained. It really highlights why building muscle earlier is like putting money in the bank. This ties into bone mineral density, BMD too, measured by DEXA scans. Again, the book pushes for earlier screening than standard practice, which often waits until 65 or 70.
Be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. BMD tends to decline alongside muscle. For women, it accelerates after menopause without HRT, because estrogen is so protective for bones. Other risks: smoking, genetics, certain meds, low muscle mass. And we care about BMD because of fractures. A hip fracture over 65 carries a shocking 15-36% one-year mortality rate. It's a catastrophic event.
Functionally devastating, even if you survive.
Totally. Rapid muscle loss during recovery makes getting back to baseline incredibly hard. So the strategies are good nutrition, heavy load-bearing activity, strength training is best HRT where appropriate, and sometimes drugs. The message is know your VMD, especially if you mainly do non-weight-bearing exercise like swimming or cycling.
I love the retirement saving analogy for strength training. You're building this reserve of muscle and bone density for later life. It compounds over time.
A perfect analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And the focus shifts away from just looking muscular to being functionally strong, especially the ability to carry heavy things. The author calls it our species superpower.
Carrying heavy stuff, like groceries.
Like groceries, kids, suitcases, moving furniture. It shaped his whole approach. He includes carrying dumbbells, kettlebells, sandbags in most workouts, and rucking.
Rucking, walking with a weighted pack.
Yeah. He does it 3 to 4 times a week, often uphill, maybe an hour, carrying 50, 60 pounds. The goal eventually is carrying maybe a quarter to a third of your body weight. It connects to that idea from the comfort crisis we've engineered carrying out a modern life, but it's fundamental. Rucking builds strength, endurance, pushes VO2 max uphill, builds crucial eccentric strength downhill.
Okay, so the book outlines 4 key elements for strength. First one sounds surprising. Grip strength.
Yeah, it's amazing how predictive grip strength in midlife is for overall mortality, as strong as VO2 max. And worryingly, average grip strength has declined significantly in recent decades. It's literally how we interact with the world.
How do you train it? Just squeeze things.
Well, things like the farmer's carry are great. Walking while holding heavy weights. The goal is ambitious. Men aiming to carry their total body weight split between 2 hands for a minute. Women, 75%.
Wow, that's heavy.
It is. Also, dead hangs from a pull-up bar. Aiming for 2 minutes for men, 90 seconds for women around age 40. Great for grip and shoulder health.
Okay, second element, concentric and eccentric loading. What's the difference?
Concentric is the lifting part, muscle shortening. Eccentric is the lowering part, muscle lengthening under tension. Think lowering a weight slowly and controlled. And that eccentric strength is vital, especially for preventing falls as we age. Think walking downhill, controlling your descent on stairs. The book mentions an 18-inch step-down test, needing a slow 3-second descent.
So focus on the lowering part of lifts.
Exactly. And rucking downhill really builds that eccentric quad strength, protecting your knees.
Third, pulling motions, like rows or pull-ups.
Yep. Pulling groceries towards you, pulling yourself up. Essential anchor movements. Rows, pull-ups, lat pull-downs, even a rowing machine contributes. And fourth, hip hinging movements. This is crucial. bending at the hips, keeping your spine neutral, engaging glutes and hamstrings. Think getting out of a chair, picking something up properly.
But the book warns about doing this under heavy load.
Yes, risk of back injury if not done perfectly. So the advice is start slow. Master the pattern. Things like single-leg step-ups or Romanian deadlifts with just body weight or very lightweight initially.
And the book specifically doesn't give detailed how-to guides for these exercises.
Right, because reading about it isn't enough. You really need to learn these movements ideally in person, or at least from detailed videos. Feeling that eccentric load in your glutes, you can't really get that from text.
Makes sense. Focus on the pattern first.
Absolutely. Learn ideal movement patterns before piling on weight. The author often has new patients stop heavy lifting initially just to assess their stability, which, conveniently, is what we'll talk about next time. It's the bedrock.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like the big takeaway is this multi-pronged strategic approach, combining that steady Zone 2 work, the peak power of VO2 max, and the protective strength training.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive plan.
It's not just about living longer, but living better, staying active, being able to do what you enjoy deep into your later years. That retirement savings idea for muscle and bone really sticks.
It does. So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is how can you start weaving these specific ideas, Zone 2, VO2 max intervals, functional strength, into your own routine, not just for now, but as prep for your centenarian decathlon?
Great question to ponder. And as you mentioned, stability is the crucial missing piece we haven't covered. That's our next deep dive, understanding why stability is the absolute foundation that lets us do all this training safely and effectively. So definitely join us for that.